Okay, Michael Jackson fans, well, Thriller 40, the documentary celebrating the 40th anniversary of Thriller, which was actually in 2022, so technically we just hit the Thriller 41 milestone. So, yeah, well, whatever. The documentary dropped a couple of days ago, December 2nd. What is it, Paramount plus Showtime or something? If you don't have the platform, which honestly I didn't, I actually signed up for it just to watch this documentary, and it was some sort of deal where I think the first 3 months is only $3.99. So if you just want to get the if you just want to view the documentary and then cancel your subscription, do it while the deal is only $3.99. Can't beat that. Plus, I need to watch Good Burger too. I'll put that on my list of things to do later this week. So, I'm not even going to sit here and say spoilers because, folks, it's Thriller. I mean, as the lyrics say, because this is Thriller. I feel like there isn't anything I can say in this documentary that'll be, oh, spoiled it. Now I don't want to see it. If you are a Michael Jackson fan, you pretty much walk into this documentary knowing what you're going to get, which unfortunately was one of the main reasons I didn't really love this documentary. Now, I knew this documentary was a bit iffy for me when it was when it was first announced, and it was revealed that Spike Lee was not a part of the project. Now, if you remember Bad 25, Journey from Motown to Off the Wall, those were both phenomenal documentaries celebrating Michael Jackson, two of his biggest solo albums. Each documentary had amazing guests, whether it be the people who worked on the songs with Michael, who went on tour with him, were part of the writing process, the production, as well as a good blending of current musical artists who were inspired in one way or another from MJ's fashion sense, dance moves, his singing, what have you. And each of those documentaries were built, or they had like 3 or 4 different sections, if you want to say it. You have the beginning or the intro, which is seemingly the setup for the album in discussion. For Bad 25, it's like, okay, we touched upon the gap between Thriller's release and the creation of Bad. Then from there, we went track to track, the entire album. Each one diving into the songs, the process of the song's creation, the impact of the short films for each song that was, made. And then from there, it talked about the different awards and how big the album got, the influence it has in the present, and, like the tours and whatnot. Then for like Journey, with the Off the Wall documentary, it started off a majority. I mean, I want to say like the first 30 or 40 minutes of that documentary was solely about MJ's come up from, of course, Gary, Indiana, the Jackson 5, once they left Motown and went to Epic Records as the Jacksons, leading into his time on The Wiz, meeting and working with Quincy Jones, and then a full breakdown of the Off the Wall album, and then the impact of the album, unfortunately not getting as many awards as Michael felt it should have gotten, which in turn led to his inspiration and the drive to make the biggest album ever with Thriller. So each documentary truly felt like it gave fans insight into Michael's thought process, the people involved with the projects, and then why each album was as huge as it was. So folks, when Thriller was announced, I'm like, okay, this documentary is going to be a banger. I'm going to rewatch it a bunch of times. I've watched it twice. The first time I watched it was the night of December 2nd because it dropped at 8 p.m. Unfortunately, Paramount Plus kept crashing for me. So I think between every 5 to 7 minutes, it would crash and I had to refresh the browser. Yes, I tried different methods, watching on my phone, my TV. I guess maybe because there were too many people watching it. I don't know. So I did manage to watch it, but it took almost twice the length of the documentary to do so. And I thought, okay, maybe I need to just watch it with no interruptions. So December 3rd, that I want to say around 10 a.m. that morning, I was able to watch it, no interruptions. Thankfully, the streaming service didn't crash, and I felt the same way I did when I first watched it. I came away from the documentary feeling empty and disappointed. I said the first thing that made me go, okay, this documentary isn't going to be that amazing is the fact that Spike Lee isn't part of it. Because again, it would have made the perfect trifecta. Spike Lee, kind of like Quincy Jones, doing all three of these amazing albums, or in this case, documentaries. I saw the timestamp was like 90 minutes, or about 86 to 88 if you subtract the credits. And I'm like, this is Thriller. Like one of the guys in the documentary said, there are 2 points in time for the music industry. The music industry before Thriller and the music industry after Thriller. There have been documentaries on different musical artists and albums that have far less of an impact than Thriller did. And you're telling me Thriller only gets a measly 90 minutes. Now, I don't remember the exact time length for Bad or Off the Wall for those documentaries, but regardless of how long those documentaries were, I came out of both of those documentaries feeling satisfied, because as huge a Michael Jackson fan as I am, there were things about those particular albums or those particular times in Michael's life that I didn't know about. And I felt like, you know what, this is great. So for Thriller to get a measly 90 minutes was just awful. Then on top of that, I know Thriller, despite being the biggest album ever, there are 2 tracks on there that kind of, just are forgotten about. The Lady in My Life and Baby Be Mine. And those tracks felt completely skipped in the documentary. I think they were mentioned like once or twice, but that was it. Now, if you go back to the other previous documentaries, like, for example, Off the Wall, it's the Falling in Love and Can't Help It. I don't really jam with those songs because those are like I don't want to say filler tracks, because Michael, he aims for perfection, but honestly, those tracks I honestly don't really care about. But in the Off the Wall documentary, it went over every single track. So even the songs I didn't care too much about, I'm like, oh, wow, okay, so I understand why this song fit on the track. I mean, the album and what it was about and this and that and the third. Same with Bad 25. That went over every single track. Thriller, it just went over the hits, of course. PYT, Wanna Be Starting Something, Thriller, Billie Jean, Beat It, Human Nature, The Girl Is Mine. But it's like, this is a celebration of the entire album. So even if some songs aren't as huge as others, you need to cover every single one of them. You do. And then on top of that, I don't believe, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm remembering this wrong, even though I watched the documentary twice, but I don't think any of the Jackson brothers were in this one. I know that Marlon and Jackie were in the Off the Wall documentary. I think Katherine Jackson made a few appearances in the Off the Wall documentary as well. I don't recall any of them being in the Bad documentary, which honestly, that makes sense, because the Bad era, that's when post-Thriller, post-Victory Tour, Michael's like, I'm doing my own thing. So yeah, I was kind of sad, because even as a kid learning about Michael, I always wanted to know, wow, like, what was it like for the siblings of Michael to be, around when this man is just making the biggest album ever? Like, how did the family dynamic shift? Like, I knew, I eventually learned, like, when it came to like the Victory Tour, like, Michael didn't want to do it. And yeah, it's sad because, Joe had his plans, and then Michael was eventually talked into doing the Pepsi stuff and the Victory Tour. And it's just like, what could have been if this man did a solo Thriller tour? That would have been insane. I mean, I feel like the Bad tour was as big as it was because fans were like, okay, you know what? We didn't get a Thriller tour, so we're going to go all out and we're going to support the Bad tour. But, yeah, this documentary, somebody posted this online or said this in one of the reviews I watched, and I wholeheartedly agree. Thriller 40 should have been a multi-part documentary, like, if it was like different episodes or something. Like, for example, the New Edition story, that was a biopic and it was 3 parts. But even still, 3 parts, there's so much stuff that wasn't covered. Like, for example, like the Bobby Brown story was a two-parter, and it covered parts of Bobby's life that weren't in the New Edition story, because the New Edition story focused on New Edition as a collective, and the Bobby Brown story focused on Bobby's life. So it's kind of like, okay, the Bobby Brown story, you could piece together where it fits in the New Edition story. And, even though they said there would be a Belle Biv DeVoe story biopic, and we never got follow up on it. But I feel like arguably Johnny Gill, Ralph Tresvant, BBD, they can all have their own different biopics, and it would be like a quote unquote expanded universe of biopics that all fit together with the New Edition story. Now, when it comes to the Michael Jackson Thriller album documentary, it could have been 3 parts too. And this is just me, making up a concept, because this would have been great. Like, for example, episode 1 could have covered the gap between Off the Wall and Thriller, Michael's desire to create an album to do what has never been done before. And then from there, it touches on each and every track on the album, going into detail about the production, the writing process. And, towards the beginning, you could touch upon Michael's, start with the Jackson 5 and Motown and, Off the Wall. But like I said, I feel like that isn't completely necessary, because from Journey from Motown to Off the Wall did such a stellar job covering the early years of Michael, the Jackson 5, the Jacksons, and his first major solo album being Off the Wall. So you don't need to spend like 20 minutes talking about the history of MJ, when it could just do like Bad 25 did. It talked about, hey, he dropped Thriller, it took the world by storm, and now it's like, okay, what's next? The same thing would happen here. It's like Off the Wall came out, it did huge, but it didn't have the huge impact Michael was going for. So he took that frustration and focused it into Thriller. And that's pretty much it. That's episode 1. Yeah, you can talk about the different time lengths for each episode, whether it be 90 minutes to whatever. You know what? And that's frustrating, because didn't Janet Jackson have her own documentary that was like 4 episodes or something? That's how this Thriller thing should have been done. No, not a knock against Janet. I'm just like bringing up a comparison. Episode 2, that could have been, the Motown 25 performance. All the short films, Beat It, Thriller, Billie Jean. How it swept the Grammys and whatnot, leading into the Victory Tour and the Pepsi stuff. And then episode 3 could have been about the global phenomenon during the Thriller era, how the album just continued to influence artists from the 80s to the present. Basically, all the details they dropped about, like, how Thriller is just being kept alive by new generations on TikTok and social media and stuff. That stuff could have been all in episode 3. And then you could have wrapped it up from there. That would have been a great way to honor the legacy of the greatest, the biggest, the highest selling album of all time. That's how it should have been done. I mean, yeah, Quincy Jones has said a lot of things about Michael Jackson in recent years, but it's a shame he wasn't part of this documentary either. I mean, again, I don't believe he was, because he was there. Quincy and Michael, they were like the Superman and Batman. I don't want to say Batman and Robin, because Batman and Robin is like, you got the mentor mentee thing, but no, it's like they stand as equals. That would have been amazing. There was so much. And sadly, it's 2023. A lot of the individuals who were around during the Thriller, album and whatnot, some of those people have passed and whatnot. So it is sad. So there was some like archival footage of, some people's like dialogue and whatnot. And man, it's sad. This, maybe when Thriller 50 happens in like 2032, Thriller 50 will get a proper documentary. But this just won't. I mean, like I said, this wasn't horrible, but I'm extremely disappointed, because there's so much this documentary could have done to truly celebrate this amazing album. So it falls at the bottom of my ranking. I'd say that Bad 25 is probably my favorite. But to be fair, that was the first one released, and I've watched that one the most times. But yeah, I put Bad 25, the Off the Wall documentary, and then Thriller at the very bottom. Because this could have been so much more. I mean, it was cool to see some things like MJ and Paul McCartney, recording "The Girl Is Mine." We got some what was it? Some crisp quality from the Victory Tour. But yeah, this album, I mean, this documentary could have been so much more. So, like I said, give it a watch. But like I said, the biggest disappointment is if you're like a casual MJ fan, you're going to love it. But if you're someone who is a diehard Michael fan, you're going to be disappointed because so much is skipped over, and you really don't come out of this documentary feeling like you learned something new. If you follow the main channel, Our Kind of Entertainment, I talked about the Maxine's Baby, the Tyler Perry story, the documentary about that. And if you don't know, my main channel, I cover all things Tyler Perry, a lot of his shows and, other projects. And even though I feel like that documentary was very well constructed, as a, Tyler Perry historian or super fan, if you will, I didn't walk away from that documentary feeling like I learned anything new. But I do feel like that documentary was better put together than this, which is sad. But yeah, so yeah, watch The Making of Thriller. That was a pretty good documentary about that particular short film. Which again, it was cool to see John Landis in this project. That was pretty cool. So, even though I was hearing stuff I already knew, just his excitement while talking about working with Michael and whatnot. Those were the elements that I truly loved about this. Like the description of Motown 25, like, hey, the televised version did not capture the complete wild, just the state of the audience. They went completely nuts. Wigs were flying up, people's ties were coming off. Everybody was losing their mind when he performed Billie Jean and did the moonwalk. So yeah, there were so many things I wish we could have seen in this. So I don't even want to bother giving it a score. I just feel like just saying it was my least favorite of the three documentaries says it all. So if you've watched the documentary, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.